Okay, I've got a story for you today that sounds almost made up. It's about how, more than 2,000 years ago, one person figured out the size of our entire planet, and they did it with incredible accuracy. The tools they used? A stick, a shadow, and one seriously clever brain. I mean, just think about that for a second. How would you measure a whole planet? Right now we've got satellites, we've got GPS, it's easy. But put yourself back then. How on earth would you even start?
Well, what if I told you the answer involved just a stick? Yeah, really. It sounds kind of crazy, but it's true. And that right there is the key to this whole incredible story. So let's get into it. How did they do it?
Okay, so first things first, we need a little context. The big challenge back then wasn't figuring out that the Earth was round. It was figuring out just how big this round Earth actually was.
You know, by the 5th century BCE, a lot of the ancient Greek thinkers were already on board with the whole spherical Earth idea. They weren't guessing. They had evidence, like seeing the Earth's curved shadow on the moon during an eclipse, or watching ships kinda sink below the horizon as they sailed away. So yeah, the shape was pretty much settled. But the size? That was a total mystery.
And this just goes to show you how tough that mystery was to solve. I mean, look at this. Plato, one of the smartest people in history, his guess was off by a whopping 60%. A bit later, the genius Archimedes gets a lot closer, only 20% off. So you can see they're chipping away at it, right? But nobody had nailed it yet.
And that's where our hero comes in. A guy who was in the perfect place at the perfect time to finally crack this thing wide open.
So let's meet Eratosthenes. This guy was what you'd call a polymath. He was good at pretty much everything. He was the head librarian at the Library of Alexandria, which at the time was basically the center of all human knowledge. He was a mathematician, a geographer, he actually invented that word, by the way, a poet, an astronomer, you name it. He was perfectly placed to see connections that other specialists might have missed.
And this gives you a great idea what people thought of him. His fans called him Pentathlus, which is like calling someone an Olympic decathlete today, a total all-rounder. But his haters, and yeah, he had them, they had a different nickname for him, Beta, as in number 2. Their whole thing was, sure, he's good at everything, but he's not the best at any one thing. Kind of the ultimate jack of all trades, master of none.
But you know what? It turns out that being Beta, that ability to connect all these different fields, was actually his superpower. And it's what led him to his huge breakthrough, which all kicked off with one simple, almost random observation.
So this was the light bulb moment. Eratosthenes is at the library, probably reading through some scrolls, and he comes across this interesting little tidbit from a city way to the south called Siena. It said that on one specific day, the summer solstice, at exactly noon, the sun was so directly overhead that it shined straight down to the bottom of a deep well. No shadows. At all.
And this is where his mind just lights up. He knew that didn't happen where he lived, in Alexandria, which was much further north. So he decides to run a little experiment. On that very same day, at the very same time, he puts a stick in the ground in Alexandria and measures the shadow. And guess what? There was a shadow. He measured the angle and it was 7.2 degrees. Now he also knew the distance between the two cities was roughly 5,000 stadia. And here comes the genius part. He did some quick math and realized that 7.2 degrees is exactly 1/50th of a full circle.
This diagram shows you his incredible leap in logic. He figured, hey, the sun is so incredibly far away that its rays are basically hitting the Earth in parallel lines. So that 7.2-degree angle he measured from the shadow in Alexandria, that had to be the exact same angle between the two cities if you drew lines from them to the center of the Earth. So if the distance between the cities, 5,000 stadia, was equal to 1/50th of the planet's curve, well, all you have to do is multiply 5,000 by 50, and boom, you've got the circumference of the whole world. So, he's got the theory, he's got his measurements, all that's left is to do the math. And the number he came up with, it was staggering. He calculated it to be 250,000 stadia. Now what's a stadian? Well, it's an ancient unit of measurement and it wasn't perfectly standardized. But if we use the most common conversion that historians agree on, his number translates to roughly 40,250 kilometers. Just look at that comparison. Our modern measurement, with all our technology, is about 40,096 kilometers. He was unbelievably close. That is just mind-blowing. Less than 1%. His margin of error was less than 1%. Let that sink in. He measured the world with a stick. It's one of the greatest intellectual achievements in human history, period.
Now, to be totally fair, we should point out that he did get a little bit lucky. His method was flawless, but some of his data was a tiny bit off. Scene wasn't perfectly on the Tropic of Cancer, and the distance between the cities wasn't exact. But in a crazy twist, all these little errors basically canceled each other out and gave him that stunningly accurate number.
But the story doesn't end there. Because in one of history's great ironies, it wasn't Eratosthenes' correct answer that shaped the future. It was a later mistake that would literally change the map of the world.
Okay, so check out this timeline. For centuries, Eratosthenes' super accurate number was the one people used. But then, along comes another famous scholar, Ptolemy. And around 150 CE, he publishes his own calculation, which made the Earth seem almost 30% smaller than it really is. And because Ptolemy was so influential, his books became the authority for the next 1,000+ years. So his smaller, incorrect number became the truth, which brings us all the way to 1492, and a guy named Christopher Columbus who was using Ptolemy's wrong number to pitch his voyage west.
And this quote just says it all perfectly. Columbus didn't know the Americas were there. He just bumped into a continent that was hiding in the 28% error. It's an incredible thought, right? It shows how easily crucial knowledge can be found, and then just as easily lost.
Which really leaves us with something to think about. The story of Aristophanes is this amazing tribute to what the human mind can do. But the next chapter, with Columbus, is a warning. And it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? What facts do we take for granted today that might just be based on some ancient error we've completely forgotten about?